Hello and welcome alumni and friends. My name is Annie Reiniger Holub. I'm an alum with a BFA from 1980 and a member of the independent SFAI alumni group called San Francisco Artists Alumni, also known as SFAA. As SFAI celebrates its 150th year, SFAA will recognize its one-year anniversary in June. SFAA came about in the face of the financial crisis and the pandemic. We all felt a need to step forward. We asked, how can we keep this community together? We built an alumni association that's promoting SFAI alumni artists through exhibitions, hosting regional meetups, and improving communication and transparency between SFAI and its community. SFAA membership is free to all alumni, students, faculty, and staff. Tonight, there'll be two parts to the presentation. First, a conversation between SFAI board chair, Lonnie Graham, and SFAA board member, Don Daedalus, who received an MFA in 2010. Don will be asking questions sent in by members of our community, including alumni, faculty, staff, and students. Following this conversation, we will switch over to a live question and answer session with SFAI leadership and SFAA founder and president, Maria Barbas. Tonight's presentation will be available to watch on SFAI's YouTube channel and on the SFAA website. So thank you all so much for coming tonight, and we'll see you again.
Thank you for that introduction, Annie. I'm very happy and pleased to be in conversation with Lonnie Graham. He's an alumnus of SFAI. He's also been an adjunct instructor there. Currently, he's the professor of photography at Penn State University. He's a Pew Fellow, an artist activist, a TEDx speaker, previously a board member of SFAA, and currently the chair of the Board of Trustees. Welcome, Lonnie.
Thank you.
This conversation is informed by questions that have been sent to us from the community. And there's a few general themes that we're basing this conversation on. But just so we're all on the same page, could you give us a brief timeline of events so that we're all familiar with the things that we're referencing? I'm thinking somewhere around the last year, year and a half.
Yeah, even if we just go back a year, I mean, I feel sort of compelled before we get into, talking about all of this stuff to acknowledge how we got here in the first place, and, the generations of individuals that were stewards of the land before we were here, probably most recently the Lonnie people. So I wanted to just make sure that we keep all of that in mind so that we can understand some level of context, so that we understand who we are and where we came from, and try to imagine where we're going to go and what we're going to do with that heritage and with that culture. So there's that, as in terms of the Art Institute. Then back to your question. If it's a year, then we have to talk about the turn of events that happened probably sometime around this time last year, when it looked like the school was the school closed. Many of the students were regrettably asked to, try to find a position in other institutions. And I know that many people have heard the story and that it's been in the press. When a predatory lender, through, sort of a technical default, came and tried to, take the school away. And that led to a lot of other decisions that really meant trying to figure out what to do with so many of the students that were so close to graduating. So there was that. And then there was the whole business about the University of California stepping in, essentially rescuing us, helping us sort of make it through to the next stages. And then sort of during that time, there were some discussions of people or other entities also trying to, develop partnerships or mergers with the school. There was, of course, later on, as you, I think, had mentioned at one point, there was the reevaluation and kind of the reshuffling of the board, so that many of those people that were there on the board at the time, it was coming to be the end of their term, but there were some other decisions that were made at that time, and so many of those people either served out until the end of their term or they resigned. So they elected me as the board chair. So that's sort of where we are now. And the interesting thing is that, a year later, we find ourselves in a very different position than we were a year ago. At that time, I was listening on the radio in a podcast to what was the demise of an institution that I had been involved with since the late 70s. This was not only that I get a superlative education here at the Art Institute, but worked with amazing people. And that's a whole other laundry list of luminaries and events and occurrences that took place after 1976 and 1977. And of course, as you mentioned, you so generously and graciously mentioned earlier, of course, I came back to teach as an adjunct. I worked with graduate students. I did special classes. And then here, suddenly, to learn that the place wasn't going to exist, I wanted to do everything I possibly could, anything I could. So I thought that I would come and try to work, I don't know, in any way. It turned out that I wound up on the board somehow. And then for some reason, somebody thought that I would be the appropriate person to put in as the board chair whenever the old board chair resigned. But over the year, like I said, because so many people really seriously sacrificed, we are open. We are still open. We're accepting students. We broke even this year, where we thought at one point we would be in sort of this sort of horrible debt position, where we actually broke even. And we are technically, the school is technically not in debt. So because of all of that work that other people have done in the past, I get to report, that we can be optimistic, that from this point, we can try to, continue to stabilize and build a runway in order to try to fulfill our responsibilities, to accept new students, to continue to function as an accredited university or art school institution, and move forward and envision, instill hope, and help people maintain the vision that artists need and that artists have, and to continue the contribution that the artists make to the society.
When you were going over those turn of events around the closure of the school, I did some mental time travel of back when I received that email, and just kind of locating where I was and how I felt, which there was a lot of confusion and a lot of surprise, on my behalf, certainly. And in preparing to talk with you today, I was looking over those questions that we've been sent from throughout the community, not only alumni, but student, faculty, the greater SFAI community. And the thing that really stood out to me was the amount of coherence of sentiment that are in the questions. A lot of them were logistical questions, but many of them were really emotional questions. There were questions that were motivated by pain, by doubt, by apprehension.
And at this point, I have to thank you. I have to thank the students that sort of hung in there, and I have to thank the students that came back. The students that had been asked to leave are now being asked to come back, because it's starting to look as if we have a way to help make sure that they'll be able to graduate and go all the way through. We are accepting new students. We put together, what's approaching our first year goal for students. The idea is that we're, incrementally accepting or trying to recruit a small number of students this year, a larger number next year, 300 students in 3 years, in order that after we maintain our little runway, we can basically begin again to break even and address and satisfy all of our financial responsibilities. So, but I can't thank the students enough. I'm welcoming them back, and I'm congratulating them for completing this academic year, and congratulations on your commencement in the coming weeks. I believe it's on the 22nd. I think I'll be there for that too. And I'm happy that you all have expressed the level of faith and dedication and articulated those things that are most important in an education at the San Francisco Art Institute. So thank you for that, and congratulations.
Where SFAI is now, how do we move forward? How does SFAI and the board begin to rebuild that trust that, it took over 100 years, right, to get where we were? How do we rebuild that trust? How do we speak to questions of accountability, of transparency?
So the whole business is incremental, isn't it? So, it seems that, over the decades, people in these kinds of murky positions of authority have, exercised that authority in one way or another to make decisions that seem, in a way, opaque to so many of us. I mean, I was here, and I really didn't have too much of an idea about what the board did or what their responsibilities were. But over these past few months, I've learned that basically what we're supposed to be doing is making sure that the lights stay turned on and people get paid, that everybody can have a job to go to, that the institution continues to function as a school. So perhaps there's been some erosion that has taken place, and it may not necessarily have happened, last year. Perhaps it was something that has gone on for a long period of time. Perhaps that this last year that it came to a head. But with all that in mind, the situation that we have is one that's really unfortunate. It's something that through the course of perhaps discussion, which is one of the things that my co-chair John Marks and I sort of came up with, this idea that we would come to visit the different constituents that make up the San Francisco Art Institute community, that we would come and essentially listen to what was in people's hearts and the things that they were thinking about, so that we could truly understand. I mean, people can write letters in frustration, they can send an email, they can complain to each other over coffee, but then, if we show up and you're able to talk to me and you're able to tell me what you're thinking, right? If that informs decisions that we can make later, then I believe that begins to form a foundation. That at least begins to initiate a dialogue. That starts to dispel, in my estimation, misunderstanding and fear. So I think that's a starting point, because once we can sort of move through all that kind of unfortunate business, once we come back and say, and I'm very sorry. Once I can come back and say that I'm sorry about the way that things happened, I'm sorry about the way that things turned out, what can we do? What can we do from here on? Will you help us? Will you help us understand? Right? So once we begin there, then perhaps the future becomes a little bit more tangible. Maybe my decision-making process, maybe the decision-making process of the board becomes a little bit more transparent because of that understanding, right? So it's through, I believe, the course of that level of understanding, that level of communication, that we can then begin to establish some kind of trust. So that, because it's not just with the students and the faculty and the staff, it's also with other people that want to help the Art Institute. They have to feel like this is a place that they can come and be comfortable, that they can invest in, that they can make sacrifices for. And many have, and they want to know what's happening. So that's where we begin. So that's what I mean when I say that it's incremental, because this not going to happen today. Even just trying to stabilize the Art Institute is not just going to happen with one thing, with one event, with the signing of one particular piece of paper. There's a lot of smaller events that have to happen, and some of them can be, perfectly, this is what's happening, everybody can see what's happening. And other things are negotiations, other people just want to help quietly. So, because everything is determined and is genus to the individuals that want to render that assistance. Everybody requires something different. So that is I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the first things that we tried to address whenever we came, because now we have another, the other board is gone and we have a new board, and most of them are comprised of artists and poets and architects and teachers, photographers. So there we are, and our aim is to try and figure out how to respond to the needs of the community as they've been outlined for us and from what we hear in these conversations.
One of the questions that we received was pertaining to the Reimagining Committee. And for those of you who have not read that report, you can find it on the SFAA website, which is sfartistatsalumni.org. Massive project that included faculty, staff, and students. What is the status of the Reimagining Committee's findings for the school right now?
Thank you, Reimagining Committee. I mean, what an amazing and incredible amount of work. And then as John Marks and I and other board members conducted the listening tour, it really became clear that, you know, so many people had invested so much. So that is something that we have, and given the fact that it's so large and there's so much material, some of the things we were able to look at immediately, you know, the diversity issue, finances. Steve Mangum, who was actually part of the Reimagining Committee, is now serving on the board in a financial capacity. Of course, you know, some of the areas are proven to be a little bit more ponderous, you know, like governance, for example. So, and those are things that sort of have to happen, you know, in stages. So first, I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge all of the work that was done. I want everybody to understand, and all the people that were involved, to understand that we are moving through and we are looking at it and we are taking those contributions that you've done very seriously. And we're acting where we can right now. Other things, other ideas, you know, we have to see, you know, what we can actually do. But we understand that the contribution is situated with the SFAA, so we go to that website and we, you know, the board has, you know, began to sort through all of the material that was submitted, and we've begun to act on it.
Looking through those questions from our larger SFAI community of teachers, faculty, staff, alumni, students, one question that was top of mind was regarding the mural. What's the status of the mural now?
That mural is, okay, so the whole conversation around the mural is, it sort of goes to the board's responsibility of trying to figure out a way to keep the doors open and to keep the lights turned on and to keep everybody paid. There were discussions around, you know, using the mural as collateral to secure a loan, which is something that's been done for decades, you know, many years. So, because whenever you get a loan, you go to the bank, you know, and, you know, they size up all your assets, basically. And in those days, the mural was certainly one of them, you know, as is everything else. So there's that. Through the course of those discussions, there was looking at every single way, because the board, I keep calling them the board, but, you know, people were trying to look at every single avenue, and that's what we're supposed to do as the board. We have to look at everything, no matter how bitter, how nasty, or how repulsive or repugnant, you know, the idea is. We have to look at everything, all the possibilities, to be able to, you know, try to make an informed decision about what we can do to make sure that we can maintain financial stability, right? So endowing the mural in place was one of those things. Of course, you know, so was like a sort of the awful possibility of having to try to take a loan out for at 20% interest. This is not anything that anybody wanted to do. These were bad ideas, and we know that they're bad ideas, but they were on the table, so we had to look at them in order that we could say, I don't think so. So trying to find someone who, well, one of the things that was happening was that there was, there was an interested party who, and a possibility was endowing the mural in place. So that would have meant that there would have been, that the mural would have had to have been assessed, that there would have been a value placed on the thing, that we know what that value is. Someone would have basically, essentially, it was almost like naming rights, so that part of the campus, or that part of the mural, if it was the whole gallery, or if it was a percentage of the campus, or whatever it was, would have received a certain quantity of money. And I think, and that would have served to help the school stabilize. So that's where we are now. But none of that, we still own the mural. It's still here. It's right downstairs. You can go in and look at it. I hope people do. So I hope.
Next time I'm in San Francisco, I'll definitely stop in and check it out.
It's a thing.
Yeah, it's got that massive presence. Lonnie, I want to be respectful for your time, but I do want to ask you one last question here. And this is another sentiment that came in through the question and answers. That is, for the alumni or the wider community who wants to help the Art Institute, what could they do now?
Help us heal. Understand that we're all in the same boat. If you love the place, if you have any feelings for it at all, try to understand that as we move forward, the thing that the first, and it doesn't cost any money, right? It's not going to cost you anything. All you have to do is approach any idea about the Institute with a level of civility and consideration. All we have to do as a community that is committed and dedicated to the cause of making sure that this institution moves forward is help each other. Consider what happens whenever you try to make an effort. If that means that if you want to enroll, if you want to encourage somebody to come here, if you have people that have gone through the process, if you're an alum, then how can we work together to move forward, to maintain the institution? So that's the first thing that we can do without any profound sacrifice. What actions will we take to make sure that we don't cause harm and don't cause any damage? What constructive thing can we do to make sure that the Art Institute stays whole? And then after that, what conversation can we have, right? How can we help and how can we encourage each other?
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Lonnie. I really enjoyed talking with you. And I believe we're going to go to a Q&A session, a live Q&A session. So all of you, please get ready for asking some questions to Lonnie Graham.
Thank you, and thanks for taking the time to do this. And understand that I know that you had so many other questions, and the community has so many other things that we weren't necessarily able to address in this state of the school that are probably more appropriate to another venue. And we will be conducting another venue at another time so that we can address a lot of these things that still weigh so heavily on our community. My co-chair, John Marks, and many of the other board members are anxious to come forward and address many of these things that you have on your mind. So we look forward to a future meeting, and thank you for this. And we'll move on to the live question and answer. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for this first In Conversation event. My name is Maria Teresa Barbist. I'm one of the alumni who started SF Artists Alumni and currently serve as the president on the SFAA board. We believe in respectful dialogue. We agree on this framework for communication that may be familiar to some of you from our last town hall with the Reimagining Committee. We speak from the I. We listen, we bring our best selves. We never make personal attacks on anyone. With this in mind, we invite you to participate in this Q&A. We ask that you write clear, precise questions and also state your name so we can follow up with you if we don't get to your question. It is very important that you refresh your browser so you can see the chat. We are recording this session to capture all questions. Thanks also to everyone who has sent in questions via email, and we are going to start by finding answers for a couple of those questions first, so it gives you some time to put the other questions in the chat. So the first question, Lonnie, does the board have a long-term plan for fundraising?
Yes, we do. Of course we do. We have a number of different options that we're always trying to explore. Of course, Amory Sharp is working over in development, and he can probably answer that question with a great deal more aplomb. So I'll let Amory answer that question. Thank you.
Sure, and hi Lonnie, and hi everyone. And by way of introduction, I'm Amory Sharp. I'm the Vice President of Advancement on staff here at SFAI, and I oversee fundraising. I joined SFAI in the fall of 2019 and took on this role on a full-time basis in early 2020. And Maria and everyone listening, and the person who submitted the question, is yes, the board and staff have a long-term fundraising plan. I think, for a very long time, as probably many of you already know, SFAI has been almost fully dependent on tuition to operate and to stay open. And when I arrived at SFAI, I went back and I looked at the history of fundraising over the past couple decades. And it seemed like SFAI never really invested into the time or resources into building a successful fundraising program. But that really started to change in early 2020 with the board. They're now prioritizing fundraising from individuals, and that includes alumni as well as wealthy donors who are interested in art and academia, and as well as foundations and other sources. And the short and long-term fundraising is really centered on three things. One, building a strong board of directors. And I think that work has already started to happen over the past several months, including people who, a board that can not only help govern the school, but people who can help us fundraise, and hopefully identifying some board members who can contribute at a fairly sort of significant level. The second part of the plan is just rebuilding our reputation with the national and local philanthropic community. And that means building trust again, that foundations and individuals, that their donations to the school will be well spent, and that we can report back accurately on how those funds were used. And then third, and this may be the most important, and this is where really everybody, on this meeting really matters, and that's building an alumni giving program. And that means, the school earning your trust and confidence in our future. And then to that end, I also just want to say, I want to thank SFAA for their efforts already in raising scholarship funds. But, building a successful fundraising program won't happen overnight, but we're taking the right steps now. And just, again, thank you for everyone partnering and helping us do that.
Thank you so much, Amory. We're going to go to our next question. And please, again, if you're on YouTube Live, refresh the feed so that the chat function comes up, and then you can put additional questions into the feed. Did I cut someone off right now? Are we ready for the next question? Okay. How do you foresee the school not only becoming financially viable, but also paying back its debt to UC and other lenders in the next 6 years?
So that would be a question for my co-chair, John Marks, who likes to, he has sort of a structural approach to these kinds of issues. So I'd like to, and since you guys have already seen a half an hour of me, I'm gonna go ahead and defer the question to John Marks.
Thanks, Lonnie. There's two parts to that question. There's a long-term and a midterm answer. Long-term is the UC land deal. As we know, UC helped us out to a great deal by absorbing our $19 million worth of debt with Boston Private. We don't have any debt to UC, but we have an option to buy the campus back within 6 years. And in order to do that, that would probably be around a $26 million all-in kind of loan that we would need to take out to pay back that debt over time. There are fortunately a number of lenders who are very excited about helping us with that. But in order to do that, we need to build enrollment up to about 350 students. And fortunately, we have a couple of new extraordinary hires in Arlene Cash and Margot Fry. And they have really given us a lot of confidence and excitement that we can do this over the next 4 years. In the short term, we're taking out a $5 to $7 million loan in order to build runway to be able to do that rebuilding of the enrollment. So next academic year, we expect to have 60 students. The next year might be 150 to 200, and it'll build up to 350. Now, that's just one part. And a lot of people say, okay, well, that's great, but what about the upgrades that need to occur to the campus and things like that? So the nice thing that we've discovered over the last several months in that the school has about $73 million in net assets. So, you know, obviously this is taking the gross assets of the school, which are around 128 million, and taking out the things we need to spend money on, including buying out UC Berkeley or UC system. In the short term, we have a number of things that we need to do. One is to fix up Chestnut Street. Another is to restore the investments. Another is to rebuild enrollment. And the third is academic enhancement. And if you add all those things up, that's around $20 to $23 million. Fortunately, the value that we've discovered with the Fort Mason lease and the Fort Mason note is approximately that same amount of money. So as we get this loan to buy runway, to build enrollment, we're also going to deal with the asset value of Fort Mason, and we're hoping that those things will pay for each other. So at the end of 6 years, we'll only have the debt to UC. So hopefully that answers that question. Maybe too much detail.
I think it's relatively digestible. Thank you. I mean, it's always better to have more information, and then you can
a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of digest it a little bit later. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. And we're moving on to the next question that was sent in by email. Is SFAI actively pursuing mergers with other institutions at the moment?
So, yeah, you heard in the recording earlier that it's our responsibility as the board to do and explore every avenue, every single thing we possibly can to try and figure out a way to continue the institution. So, yeah, having conversations with various institutions about mergers or partnerships or some level of collaboration is certainly not off the table. Engaging these people in constructive conversations is a first step, just like a handshake. And then you've got to start to get into the logistics, as you can imagine, might involve all levels of complications and minutiae and negotiations. I guess it's like dating, but you can sort of imagine. So to answer the question, yes, we're exploring all the avenues.
Thank you, Lonnie. And I'm sorry, Alicia, I missed your question earlier. It was a follow-up question to before. So John, if you could get ready. Is this loan being taken against the mural? Could we have more clarity on this, please? From Alicia McCarthy.
We've talked to several different lenders, and some of the lenders would like to use the mural. Some of the lenders would like to use the Fort Mason lease and or the note. And as of right now, we're talking to several different groups, and we're trying to figure out what the best end result is for the school. So it's a little bit undetermined, but the mural is a very good asset that the school has available.
Thank you, John, for this follow-up. And the next question is about the fall semester. Who has been rehired for the fall semester, and what will the curriculum look like?
That would probably be, if Jennifer Rissler doesn't mind, I think that question would be appropriate to Jennifer, as she has insight into every single thing that goes on here. So Jennifer, would you mind answering that question?
Sure. So for the curricular, I'll take the curricular piece first, and that is the summer, fall, and spring semester curriculum is being planned in liaison with department chairs and program directors. And so all of our current degree programs will continue to have students, matriculated students in them. And we have a lot more insight on that as we bring in new students into the next academic year. And in terms of what the curriculum looks like, we, like many other institutions, are really trying to balance health and safety issues around COVID with a strong desire between faculty, students, and staff to return to campus and to return to in-person teaching and learning and studio practice. And so about 30% of our fall curriculum will be in person, which is one third of the entire curriculum. We know that there are a lot of students, both continuing and return and new students, who will not be in the Bay Area in the fall. I do anticipate that will change for the spring. And so the hope is to have even more offerings in person for the spring 2022 term. And to support the curriculum, all of the tenure and tenure track faculty members, there will be 14 after this academic year concludes, because one of our esteemed faculty members, Reagan Louie, is retiring after this semester. So we'll have 14 tenured and tenure track faculty members returning to support the curriculum, as well as a handful of adjunct faculty members, several of whom are in leadership roles, either as department chairs or program directors. And we bring back adjuncts. It's a very strong desire to bring back more adjuncts as we can to support the curriculum as we grow the student population. And in terms of other staff, I think Lonnie mentioned previously that we have brought in 2 colleagues this spring, Arlene Cash, who is overseeing enrollment and student affairs, and Margot Fry, who was working on our digital marketing efforts. And alongside Arlene, she and I are really talking through what additional hires we will need to make to support the student bodies, particularly in student affairs, and also looking at how we can support the studio operations with staff that we currently have, and really looking toward what we might need to support the curriculum and the co-curricular initiatives as well. So I hope that answered that question, Maria. I'm happy to take a follow-up if there is one.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was great. And we are gonna go back to a question that is very important for the community, and that is again about the mural. And there are questions now that if it is used as collateral, what does that mean for the mural, right? Would that mean that, you know, at any point it could be moved or not? So I give that back to John, maybe?
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't clarify that. It's actually quite an important point. So all of the lenders who are interested in using the mural as collateral clearly know that the mural is expected to be landmarked and no one wants to move it. The school doesn't want to move it. UC doesn't want to move it. So that is currently not part of any collateral consideration that the mural would ever be moved. And the lenders are fine with that. Also, we don't expect that any loan that would use the mural as collateral would last very long. You know, it'd be a short-term loan until we can get the larger loan to buy back the campus from UC.
All right, thank you so much for clarifying, John. And again, if you have any additional questions, we still have some time left. Please put them in the chat and we're going to answer the questions right away. I'm going to move forward with the question that were posed in, you know, either to us, sent to us directly, or post in Facebook groups where we found them, especially also regarding the alumni fund. And so the next question that I would go to is a question that I thought was really, really important. And it might have been already answered through Lonnie's talk, but I think it is important to reiterate that again. And this was a question that was sent by a donor. I have been a donor in the past and SFAI is in my will, but I have been under the impression that the school was no longer admitting students. I'm an alumnus and would like to see the school continue, but I don't see the point in donating to a defunct institution. So please, can you, again, in a short answer, what is the current status of SFAI, and also include the accreditation? Lonnie, probably for you? Maybe.
We're open. This is a discussion that we've had, you know, quite a great deal. And it's something that can be answered in a number of different ways. I mean, if, you know, Arlene is actively recruiting students as we speak, where, you know, she, you know, sort of goes about this thing with integrity, understanding the whole picture, as she, number one, invites students back, and number two, you know, begins to recruit new students. The school, the status of the school, of course, is that we are open, and as I said, you know, in the previous recording, we are accepting students. Jennifer explains in a very eloquent way how and what happened in a previous year. I don't know if she wants to do that right now again, but oh, she's shaking her head. Okay, we might. I might avail you upon you to do that once again. But the status of the school is, yes, indeed, we're open. That's my short answer. But I think that, you know, everyone listening deserves a deeper explanation, if you don't mind, Jim.
Sure. I think by open, you mean we are fully accredited. And that's a question that I know has been asked of me repeatedly. When we went through the last year's sort of crisis of having to transfer students away and knowing that we could only teach out a limited number of students based on how many credits they had remaining, which shifted a lot based on income that we received and funding that we received to keep the lights on, to use Lonnie's quote. And so I had to work very closely in my role as accreditation liaison officer. I've had that role, sort of dual appointment alongside the dean appointment, for about 11 years. And so I have very close connections with our liaisons at both our regional accrediting body, which is the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, better known as WASC, and the National Association of Schools of Art and Design, NASAD, which is our specialized accrediting agency. And so I had to do a lot of reporting back to them at every turn When we knew that we no longer had students in particular degrees, we had to do reporting on the transfer out scheme that we were using with students to help them identify where they could transfer to. We also had to report a lot of that information to the National Clearinghouse. And so at every step of the way, monthly, I was in dialogue with both of our accrediting agencies, and we will actually have 3 more years of accrediting, full accreditation from NASAD, at which point we'll go through a reaffirmation, and next year we'll be going through our reaffirmation with WASC. And so they are very aware of our situation and are very much in support of SFAI continuing as a Title IV degree granting institution. They've been really our advocates, and I really can say that they're also aware that what we have been facing for the last 12 months, very acutely so 12 months ago, other institutions are also facing. And so they've actually also had to really shift gears to better support institutions that are going through this type of crisis events. And so fully accredited on degree granting, able to draw down Title IV financial aid for students. That might be too long of an answer, but that's hopefully very clear.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's a really important fact for everyone to know. And we're going back to the chat and Alicia McCarthy. Again, a question about the loan. What happens if the new loan cannot be paid back? SFAI still has 19 million to pay back on top of dollars to run the school, of money that is needed to run the school. So I'm probably gonna give this question to John again.
Yeah, so there's 2 different loans. So there's a short-term loan between now and 6 years from now. And then there's the loan to buy out the option on the land from the University of California. And that loan has a much larger collateral base, and that's why the lenders are interested in it. If there's residual borrowing that we need that carries over from the short-term loan, we could fold that into the long-term loan. It is all based on the idea that we need to get to 350 students over the course of the next 4 years. If we fail to do that, if we fall a little bit below that, we can't quite make that, we have still many options to bridge over that. Not the least of which was the partnership notion that Lonnie had talked about before. So the chances of the school going away are very small, but we have to look at the difference between some of those options. The biggest thing that we have going for us from an asset standpoint relative to the $7 million loan is the value of the lease at Fort Mason and the value of the note. Fort Mason actually owes us some money. And the combination of those things provide for a fairly solid financial basis to make it through, even if we fall a little short on the enrollment.
Thank you, John. And I'm gonna go back to a question that came up in the chat. And it is about the Reimagine Committee and specifically about the governance subcommittee. Can you speak more on the governance suggestions from the Reimagine Committee? There were some very interesting proposals, including co-op models and others. What is the status of those ideas?
So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, but firstly, the Reimagine Committee did an incredible amount of work. There were so many people involved with that thing that did such an enormous amount of work, and it was a notable contribution. And I have to continue to acknowledge that, and I have to continue to thank all of the people that were involved in that. So that's one thing that is sort of paramount. The next thing is that I'll reiterate that we as a group have gone in on various occasions, and we still continue to access the data that lies with you, Maria, at the SFAA, right? So we have to go, we go in there and we we continue to sort of mine this thing and pull things out. That's just, overall. There are things that are specific that we're able to get to right away. And, some of those things have to do with, diversity and inclusion. I think, we're working on that one. And other ones have to do with finance. And as we mentioned before, we have people that were on the Reimagining Committee that are now, helping us, with issues on the board. But your question was specifically about governance. So as it is, and I'm not going to try to draw any crazy analogies, but to try to get straight to the question, with the issue of governance, trying to once the institution is stabilized, once we're able to make sure that we can serve the community and that we can serve the students in a way that we're all bound to do it, right? Then I think that we can begin to examine the incremental process of changing the way that we govern the school, right? Because the last thing that I think anybody wants to do is sort of, leave union members without a place to go, leave faculty without anyone to teach. And a cooperative model, like a co-op, isn't necessarily conducive to having certain kinds of employees work in that institution. Some of my other colleagues here might be able to address that in a more fluent manner. But some of the options that we've been able to look at in terms of governance and some of the things that were presented have to be examined in a way that can make sense. One thing has to be done in order for another thing to happen, right? So I think that's where we are right now. And as a matter of fact, just this week, we're looking at organizational charts, and I think that there was, we looked at the Reimagining Committee's flow chart in terms of governance and responsibilities as they compare to some of the other options that we're looking at. So it's not, nobody's put it away, nobody's thrown it under the table. It's still very active, and it's still very much part of the conversation, and it's something that's still very much alive. But in order to activate these things in an effective and responsible manner, this is something that we have to look at very carefully. So some things take a little bit more time, and some things can be done right away. So that's where we are. If you want to talk about it a little bit more, I can.
I have if I could interject, Maria, one sort of tangible that I can share with the group, to Lonnie's point about some things taking a longer process and other things that we can do more expeditiously. One recommendation that came out of the Reimagine Committee was to have more voices at the table with the administrative team. And so as of last week, we've established what we're calling an advisory council. And we've asked the staff and the faculty to elect their representatives for that council. And that council joins us monthly. We had our first meeting last week. The faculty representatives include Brett Reichman and Tony Labat. The staff representatives are Zaina Barakay and Chris Paddock. And we had a really robust conversation about some immediate issues and decision points that we needed to talk through to get their input. And that has really, I think, in a short period of time, informed some decisions that we would normally make just as an admin team. So that's one very tangible takeaway. We're really looking forward to sustaining that conversation and that dialogue to get their input representing those constituencies. So that's one very, very specific example.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm reminding you all one more time to please refresh your YouTube live feed in order to be able to put questions in the chat. It's going to be our final call soon for additional questions. I'm going to go back one more time to questions that were emailed in. And this is one question that was very important for alumni, especially alumni who were considering donating to the alumni fund that was organized by SF Artists Alumni. Is SFAI being upfront about the state of affairs at the school? Are the incoming students aware of the school being in a bad situation financially? Or is that information being suppressed? And I'm going to hand this, I believe, to Arlene.
Sure. Thank you. And it is a great question. It's interesting is that the new students who are coming in, and I've spoken to, I don't know, 30 or 40 of them, I think by now, they don't ask about the state of the financial affairs. They're asking, will we take their credits? They're asking, can we have housing? They're asking about financial aid and the availability of scholarships and additional need-based aid. I don't bring up to them the fact that there were financial issues with SFAI in the past. I think that many students and parents do a lot of due diligence in the process of even applying to colleges. They are all into social media and Googling things. And so they've seen a lot of this. They're coming here fully aware of the institution to which they want to get their four-year degree. And I assure them that all things being equal, and as they should be, they will be able to get their four-year degree. Now, there are also students coming in who have been here in the past, and they do have very good and poignant questions about where are we now? There were some financial issues earlier, and I tried to give them as much information to be as candid and transparent as I possibly can about where we are at any given moment. And it is a very fluid situation, but as it is where it is, I tell these students and their parents that we are financially stable. As Jennifer mentioned earlier, our accreditation is in place and our faculty are here. Students coming in the future, this year particularly, will have a very small student to faculty ratio. So we feel great about what's going on and about what students can get and how well they can access the great resources of SFAI. And really, that's what I tell them. Students want to know, can I get my degree? And I assure them that everything is in place for them to get their degree. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that, but that's pretty much where we are.
Yeah. So Arlene, what do you tell the students that? So we assume that the students are well informed. We assume that the students are able to read the newspapers and the internet and see every single thing about the Art Institute has been published in the last 6 months. So we know that about them, right? So what then do you tell the students that want to come back? Like whenever you're inviting these students back and they've been through this sort of horribly unfortunate trauma.
So thanks, Lonnie. Our students who are coming back want to be able to trust that things are changing. They really want to feel as though the things that were in place, which required them to have to leave, are different and are fixed or are getting fixed. That's so important to them. And so I tell them that when I took this position, and as I have been here for the last 2 months, I have done lots of due diligence in talking to our faculty and talking to the staff and communicating with alumni. There's an alumni fundraising effort, and it was very important to hear them say, we are ready to reinvest and to invest in the future of SFAI by giving to this fund and supporting students who are going to be coming here. And after all of that, I decided, I felt it was comfortable saying to these students, please come back. If you are interested and you want to, we're going to do everything we can and make every effort for you to come back. So I'm telling them that we are ready. that we are poised for success, that they can come here and get their degree. We expect them to come back in 25 years for their reunion, and in 50 years for that reunion, and in 150 years from now to be someone to be celebrating, not probably those coming here now, that 300th anniversary. It's my expectation that will happen.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Arlene. And we have 2 more comments from the chat, and then I'm going to give it for the final comment to Lonnie. How about alumni? This is from Linda La Rochelle. How about alumni donating a piece of art, possibly each year, and SFAI have a yearly gala and alumni art auction? And also, could we have an alumni wall where names of alumni donors are posted, name and date of graduation? So I think the bigger question is also like, what is the message that you want to give and want to send to alumni, and also how can alumni support the school right now?
And there it is. There's the middle of it, right? So, you know, because the students are why we're here. The students are why we've dedicated all of this time and effort. The students, you know, as the students are us. As we matriculate through the program, as we become, as we inform, as we continue to be inspired, as we look forward, we continue. We come back and we want to continue to reinforce the place, and we want to make a place for others to have some kind of an experience. And it's not always fantastic, but it's a way for us to continue to provide a place for others to come and study and to have an experience and to learn about themselves, to learn about who they are and what they do and how they can refine their practice, right? And that's where we are, because it is about the students. And once again, I have to congratulate all of those people that have returned. I have to thank them, and I have to congratulate this graduating class that's coming soon. So, and thanks to the students and the parents and all of those individuals that are standing around waiting to come back. I'm sorry to all those people that have suffered trauma and have had to go through all of this. I'm deeply sorry. But as you can see, by this gathering of colleagues that we have here, by these individuals that have all come together, and this is just the people that are here today, right? You can see this level of commitment that goes way beyond this small gathering. You can see that we're all here committed to one single cause, and that's to keep the school open. And here we are in a very different position than we were last year. Here we are positioned to go to another place, to find even greater stability, so that we can continue to offer one of the most unique educational experiences in North America. So here we are, and I hope that you remain with us. And I thank you. I thank you, Maria. I thank you, SFAA. Thank you, Don. Thank you, all of the colleagues that have been here today. Thank you, Jennifer and John. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. And thanks everyone for joining us here on YouTube Live. I want to give a big shout out to Christopher Paddock, who made this all possible on the technical side. And yeah, Lonnie, I agree with you. Thanks for everyone who's been working so hard to make to make this even possible, that we are here a year later and the school is open. Big thank you to the Reimagining Committee for working so hard for more than 6 months and coming up with so many amazing ideas that are going to influence the school, not just now, but also in the future. And this is only the beginning of this series that is called In Conversation, where we are going to be having this dialogue between SFAI and the alumni. And as SF Artists Alumni, we are really committed to fostering transparency and to foster communication And one of the initiatives that I just want to mention briefly is the SFAI Community Initiative that was started by Julie Blankenship, and we are gonna invite representatives from all different groups of the SFAI alumni community to come together for 3 meetings starting at the end of May. So please keep an eye also for that. We're gonna reach out to all the groups and invite you to join us for that. Alrighty, so this is the end of our first In Conversation, Lonnie. Thank you so much again. Bye, everyone.